Hey, what's up, guys? So today's the 4th of July, so happy Independence Day. But also today, Stranger Things came out, and I thought it'd be a fun little project to rebuild the cards from that show. I got good news and bad news. The bad news is I did use two plugins to get this done. The good news is they're both free and they're both really awesome. The first plugin I got was Unmult from Red Giant, so you can go ahead and download that. That's going to help us pull any black colors out of any image. And the other one I got is FX Console from Video Copilot, which is also free, also easy to install, and that's going to pull up a little dialog box for us to be able to work a little bit quicker and work better on a smaller screen. So go ahead, download and install those, and then let's get started. Okay, guys, so Stranger Things just came out, so let's get to work on this logo. First thing we're going to do is let's make a new composition. HD is fine. Let's do 1920 by 1080, square pixels, 23.976, and 5 seconds should do it. So let's okay that. Oh, actually, first let's call this main comp. And now we're ready to okay it. Okay, now let us lay some text down. So let's click this text tool icon right here. I'm going to click somewhere in the middle. I'm choosing this font. Paragraph I have centered here. Choosing this font I found on the internet. And here I have the all caps clicked off. So I'm going to click here and just start typing. Now, make sure you have the align palette out, and if not, you could just go here and window and align. So I have it out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this to center it horizontally and that to center it vertically. Now I want to make the S and the R a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to double click, and for this I'm going to make this as 250. Oops. And I'm going to use this, which is the baseline shift tool. I'm going to move that over to the left so that the top is aligned. I'm going to do the same thing for the R. So we're going to go 250, and then we're going to shift this down, and that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to make a pre-comp out of this just so that it's going to be easy for us to go into the pre-comp that looks very simple, and we can type whatever we want later on. So let's click this right here and go to layer and pre-compose. I'm going to call this PC for pre-comp underscore live text, and then okay that. Now we have the pre-comp here, and we're good to. Okay, so now here's the pre-comp, and we're inside of the main comp, as you can see here. I'm going to go inside of the pre-comp. Let's click the text layer. Now let's right click and let's add a layer style. And the layer style we're going to add is going to be color overlay. And default is red, but I don't want red. I want it to be black. So there we go. Just to make sure it's not invisible, you can click this transparency icon here, and you can see that we have black text. So I'll go ahead and click that, turn that back on. Let's add one more layer style. So let's right click here, click layer style. I'm going to add a stroke. And for the stroke, I don't want it red here, not just yet. I do want to make it 4 pixels though, and let's do the color of white. That is looking exactly like what I want. Okay, now that it looks like what we want, let's go back to the main comp, and here it is. As you can see, I'll click the transparency, and let's use the FX console. So it's a control and spacebar for me, and let's click Unmult, which is our free plugin that we just downloaded, and apply that. You see what it did? It took all the black out. And Unmult is very powerful because I use it almost every day just because it can strip the black out of anything. Okay, so let's turn the transparency back on. I don't want this white. I want a red stroke. So let's click this here and pull up the FX console, and I'm going to start typing fill. And here we go. We have a little red here, but that red's a little bit too bright for me right now. That's just I just want to make the underlaying. So I'm going to choose a dark red like that. Okay. Now we're going to have the bright part, but we're going to add little hotspots to it. But first, let's make the bright part of it. So here, oh, I'm sorry. I clicked Apple D to duplicate the layer. And now let's choose a red, something like that. That looks pretty good. Now, I want to add a texture and a glow to this, but first let's add the glow. Let's pull this FX console up and click glow. And for the threshold, I'm going to do 40. And the radius, I'm going to do 30. And that's looking pretty good. So to add the little hotspots now, let's right click here and make a new solid. As long as the size is the comp size, the color doesn't matter. So now the solid, oops, I double clicked on that. For the solid, let's call this fractal noise, because we are going to apply an effect that is also called fractal noise, and there it is. And for the contrast, let's do 250. So it gets it nice black and white. And let's twirl down the transform. And let's make the scale here 150. And now you have fractal noise. How is this going to make the hotspots? Well, we're going to take the text layer that's right below it and then do a luma. See, now we have these nice little hot spots and glows just randomly throughout all of the text. You know, I think it's looking pretty good, and I think we could do one more thing to make it look just a little bit better. So let's take these two layers and click Command D to duplicate them. And on the on this guy right here, let's remove the glow, and instead I'm gonna do a Gaussian blur, and let's do the blurriness to about 50. I like that. I think that looks really nice for what we have so far. So next, let's drift the text backward in space, and we're going to cheat a little bit. So let's make a new null layer. Let's right click over here and click new and null object. Let's take all of our text layers and pick whip it to the null. I like to name my nulls, so let's call this the text scalar. And then let's press S to bring up the scale property, and let's click on the first frame. Let's go over to the last frame and let's scale it down 20%. I think that's good, guys. Let's see. That's a good scaling rate, I think. You know, I think it's starting to look good, and it can look better. I want to add like a diffused glow right here behind this text. So let's drop this solid in down here, and let's fill this with a red. This default red is actually going to work for us. So let's go up here and use the ellipse tool, and I double click on this just like this, and it makes a perfect mask around the solid that you have dropped in. Now let's shrink this down, something like that, and I want to get it good coverage around the lettering. Now let's press F, and let's do 420. 420 looks good to me. Now let's press T to bring up the opacity, and let's take that down to about 30%. Okay, that looks good. And now let's label this layer and call it diffuse. And let's drop one more layer underneath the diffuse, and let's call that BG. I'm just going to fill this with black. Now it has this nice little center red glow on it, and I'm really liking that. Okay, so I'm seeing some serious banding going on here. I don't know if you guys can see that. I actually did this earlier, and I didn't have nearly this amount of banding going on, but we're gonna fix that. So let's right click right over here and go new adjustment layer, and let's call this adjustment layer ADJ. I like to keep that there, and then let's call it noise. So let's pull up FX console and type in noise, and we'll choose this one that's just called noise. And I'm gonna uncheck use color noise, and I'm gonna set the amount to 8%. And boom, all that banding is now gone. And we also have a little added, let's zoom in here. We also have this nice little added grit on the text. So here it is without, and here it is with. And I'm definitely liking the grit that the noise added, on top of removing the banding. Okay, so if you want to stop here, you can. I think it looks pretty good, but if you want to keep going, we could do that too. There's a couple small things we could do. Let's click this fractal noise here, and let's twirl down this sub settings, and let's keyframe on the first frame the sub rotation, and let's go over here to 5 seconds, and we just want a subtle move, so I'm only going to move it 2 degrees. And you can see that it shifted here, but over 5 seconds you're not going to notice that big of a shift. It's just going to be a really subtle move. So let's click this layer and press U to bring up the keyframes. I don't want to have to do that all over again to this. So if you go to the first frame where we made these keyframes and click the word sub-rotation, it's going to highlight both keyframes. And then we can copy that, click this other fractal noise, and then paste it. And now it's going to be applied to that as well. And now that I'm looking at it, I think the blur is too strong, or too, yeah, I think it's too strong there. So let's click this live text here where we put the Gaussian blur. I'm going to turn this down to 20. And now that looks that looks better to me. We could do one more thing. Oops, accidentally double click that. I'm going to take this live text and press T for opacity. I'm not a big scripter, but I do know how to do a couple of things, and I want to add a little flicker to this. And instead of keyframing the opacity over and over again, up and down, I'm going to hold Option and then click this keyframe. It's going to bring up this little script window. Again, I'm not a scripter, but I do know how to do a few things. Let's type the word wiggle and parentheses, and inside of these parentheses I'm going to do a frequency of 25 and an amount of I'll say 10. So what that's going to do is going to take the opacity of what it's currently at of 100, and 25 times in 1 second it's going to bounce it 10 values up or down. So it could be going from, it'll have a range of 90 to 110 25 times a second. So let's preview that, and you can see it's kind of blinking, and that's what we want. I'll zoom in on it and let's preview that. Not really. Okay, so I think I want to do one last thing just to finish this thing off, and that's to add a little flickering going on here. And I can take this layer number 6 here, and then let's press T for opacity. I could keyframe this opacity all throughout here to move up and down, or I could make it easy on myself and hold Option and click that stopwatch right there, and let's start typing the word wiggle, and then type parentheses. I'm going to do a frequency of 25 times a second and an amount of 30. So it's going to change 100 plus or minus 30 25 times a second. So I'm also going to do the same thing for the diffuse. So let's press T to bring up the opacity, hold Option and click this stopwatch, and let's wiggle and parentheses. And I still like 25 times for the frequency, but I'm only going to change the opacity 4%. So let's preview this. There, now we have this little subtle flickering going on here, and we didn't have to spend all day keyframing up and down throughout this timeline here. So there you have it, guys. I think it looks pretty good. So in case you are wondering why I made a precomp for the text instead of just typing the text here, is that there's 3 layers of this text, and I didn't want to have to paste 3 times every time I wanted to change what this was going to say. The beauty of this build is if we go inside the PC Live text, we can go in here and let's duplicate this Stranger Things so we have our original, and let's double click here, and I could just put whatever I want now. And let's center this up, and if I wanted to add bars, I could add bars. Let's press T for opacity, and then let's make a mask and double click that. And move this down, move this over, and bring this back up to 100. I'm going to copy the layer style from here and apply it to that, and I'll duplicate this, and let's move this down here. Now let's go to the main comp. See how easy it is to change what you want to put here. All you have to do is change this one pre-comp, and you won't have to do much more work other than watch your results here in the main comp. So hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. That's all I got for you now. Hope you have fun with this and maybe use it. Hopefully you learned something today, and thank you guys for watching. See you next time.
So that's it. And I hope that you guys enjoyed. I hope that it was easy for you to follow along, and I hope you learned something. And that's all I could really ask for, you know. If you do want to see more, let me know down in the comments. I do plan on making more of these, and I have fun making them. I like teaching people, and you know, I'm making these really for the everyday YouTuber that wants to add maybe a little flair to their cards, and they don't want to spend too much time doing them. So I'm trying to keep these as short as possible and as interesting as possible. So be on the lookout for more of these in the future. All right, thanks for watching, guys.